So today I wanted to talk about my most disappointing sequel of all time. And there's not going to be any gameplay footage on this one because, for one thing, I don't own the game anymore. And even if I did, I really wouldn't want to play it again because I hate it that much. For starters, though, there was this game on PS1 called Xenogears. Now, Xenogears is my favorite game of all time. And, you know, it's got an absolutely epic story, the best story I've ever seen on a console game. You know, great music, great battle system. Actually, it's got, well, 3 different kinds of combat, actually. And, you know, just all around, well-made game. So, then when the PlayStation 2 rolled around, I heard that the team that made that game had, you know, split and formed their own company called Monolith Soft. And they were working on kind of a spiritual successor to the game. And that game, of course, was Xenosaga. And I love this game too. It wasn't quite as good as Xenogears, but you know, it was still highly enjoyable. Same thing, great story, great music, great combat. Yeah. And then, you know, I beat that, and I discovered that I have to wait like a year and a half to play the sequel. You know, which stunk, but I'd rather have them take a while to, you know, get the sequel out there than just pump it out and have it be crappy. Well, you know, before the game hits, like a month before the game hits, I see some character designs for the second game, and for some reason they were going with a more human look rather than the anime look of the first game. And, you know, I thought that was kind of a weird choice, but, you know, I didn't think much of it at that time. But when I got the game in my hands, which is Xenosaga 2, it became one of many, many issues I have with this game. So, for starters, like I said, the character designs. I don't know how well you can tell from that. Well, that's a better image, actually. See, the characters all have like a nice anime look to them. And on this one, they look more realistic. But I find that they have like zero personality with this look, and I don't know, I really don't like it at all. Now, if that was the only thing that they changed in this game, it would have been fine. I would have been able to look past it. But for whatever reason, they decided to change just about everything for the sequel. And you know, the rumor I heard with that is that they actually asked fans what they would want for the sequel, and supposedly that's what the fans told them. You know, I haven't really researched that to see if it's true or not, but if it is, you know, shame on us. Well, by us I mean you. Yeah, but like I said, the character art is different. And then we come to the voice actors. Now, I don't know what the deal is, if they just couldn't, you know, retain some of the original voice actors, if they asked for too much money, or if they were working on something else. But, you know, there are quite a few different voice actors on this. You know, most of them aren't too bad, but the one who does Cosmos is terrible. She just, you know, the first one had, Cosmos sounded like an android. This one, she just sounds like a human trying to impersonate an android. That's the best way I can just describe it. It's just not very good at all. And, you know, there are some other weak voice acting performances in the game, too. Then we get to the music. And, again, I don't know what the deal was, because Yasunori Mitsuda did the music for the first game. And, you know, while it was one of his weaker soundtracks, it was still really good. But they brought in a different composer for this one. I'm not sure what her name was. I've seen it before, I always forget it though. And apparently this was like the worst soundtrack she's ever done in her life, and yeah, it's pretty awful. It's just like bad techno and J-pop stuff. Okay, next up we have the graphics, and the graphics are really a mixed bag. There are some areas in the game, like especially like the mech dungeons, that look, you know, fantastic. But then there's some cutscenes with the characters, and you know, they're zoomed in real close, and like everything looks good, and then all of a sudden they raise this like blocky hand up, and it looks like something from the PlayStation 1 days. You know, it's like all square here, and you know, these are all connected together, And if you're looking at a character from a distance, that's that's fine, that's totally acceptable. But when you're like this close to a character, you got to put some more detail into the hands, because it's very distracting, especially when the scene is supposed to be somewhat important. So yeah, graphics are definitely a mixed bag. Next up is there are some loading issues in the game. The first game, it didn't really have loading times, bad loading times, I would say. This one definitely does. It takes, a few seconds to go to any screen, and you have to go to new screens all the time, so that adds up. And then when you actually get into combat, you can see all your enemies on the field. When you touch an enemy, it'll load the battle, but what it does is really messed up, because it'll do the screen wipe or shatter. I think it's like a shatter effect. So it does that, then it loads the battle screen, then it loads each character and enemy individually, one by one. And then once all the characters are on the screen, then the battle music starts. So you're sitting there for 3 seconds, watching like all this stuff pop up one by one, just sitting there in silence. It's really weird. And now battles are the big issue with the game. So Xenogears and Xenosaga both had relatively simple battle systems. It was a little flashy, but it was still simple, straightforward. Didn't take a lot of brain power to use, or it wasn't like super tedious or anything like that. Well, with this game, they decided to implement a break system where every enemy has 3 different zones you can hit, and by hitting specific zones in a specific order, you break their defense, and then you can inflict more damage. Now, in theory, that sounds like it could be good, but really, there's some major problems with this. First of all, the enemies, their defense to start out with is just way too high. Until you break their defense, you're going to be inflicting very, very little damage. And after you break their defense, what you have to do is you have to boost your other characters in. So like the first game, it does have the boost feature, but that's not enough. You also have to do this thing called stocking. Now, in the first game, there was a guard command where you would guard, and then you would accumulate a few extra AP, so you'd have a full 6 for the next turn. Well, in this game, there is no guard command. You just select stock, and what happens is the game supposedly says you have a small chance of defending against an attack, but it is very, very small. They claim it's like 25%, but it's much lower than that. So basically what you're doing is, you're accumulating an extra attack, but you're completely defenseless, and the enemies in this game are super powerful, and they will just, while you're sitting there stocking your attack points, they're just hammering your party, and you'll have to heal like, every 2-3 turns. So very annoying. And once you have all your characters with like 3 stock points, you have a full boost gauge, then you go ahead, you break the enemy's defenses, you either knock them up into the air or you down them, and when they're in that state, you boost in your other characters right away, but only if their icon's not in the little turn window. So assuming that, you boost your other characters in, and then, that character inflicts damage, and then you boost another character, that one inflicts damage, so on and so forth. And then you have to do this for every enemy in the battle, so, if there's 3 enemies, you're going to have to do this 3 times. And you can imagine how long it would take. Random encounters can take like 8 minutes for early game encounters, which is ridiculous. And actually, I think the whole break zone thing works well for like boss battles, but for random encounters, they should have just done something like simplified version of it, or just not have break zones for random encounters at all. It really doesn't make a lot of sense. Also with the combat, you really don't have tech attacks anymore, even though the names are there. It's really just totally nerfed down regular attacks. You do have double attacks that you can do with another party member, But again, you run into the whole stocking and boosting problem, and you know, while the attacks look spectacular, they really don't do enough damage to make it worth taking all the damage while you're preparing to unleash it. So, kind of a waste. Another thing with the battle is, like I said, you can see all your enemies on the screen, and you know, you touch them to initiate combat. You don't like strike them or anything, you just run into them. But it kind of doesn't make any sense sometimes, because you can see an enemy's got his back turned towards you, so you know, let's say this is the enemy's back, you run right into it, and you can actually be back attacked this way, or surrounded, which is even worse in my opinion. You know, it doesn't make any sense at all why you would be back attacked when you ran into the enemy's back. And with being surrounded, I've actually run into one time where I was kind of late in the game. I had to actually reset a game because I got basically in a stalemate where I got into a battle, I was surrounded, they knocked out one of my characters, I would revive that character, they knock him right out, would revive him, knock him right out, you know, so on and so forth. And you know, like, even if I did defeat the enemy on the one side, I still have the two behind me absolutely hammering my party. And once you defeat that one on that side, your characters don't automatically turn to face the other guy, even though they know he's there. He's, you know, he's absolutely massacring them. They just stand there. You have to actually, you know, do an attack and attack the guy behind you, which is stupid, because then you're like, well, do I resurrect my fallen comrade, or do I attack the guy behind me so I can turn around, but I'm still going to get hit? You know, it's just totally dumb. Another thing that they changed for this game is there are no shops. You know, that would have been okay if that's the way it was from the beginning, like Xenosaga 1, you know, there was no shops. But for whatever reason, they decided to take shops out of this one. I don't know why. So you don't have it anywhere you can buy, you know, items, equipment. There is no equipment either, by the way. And you know, you can find like equipment in, or not equipment, but items in dungeons, and you can also steal it from enemies and win it from battles. And there do seem to be enough like restorative items to get you through the game. But it's annoying because, you know, if I need like 10 medkits, I want to just go to a shop and buy 10 medkits. I don't want to have to go through like 10, 20, 30 battles. Excuse me. And there's the only place to sell your excess stuff is this, it's attached to a side quest where you have to relieve Captain Matthew's debt, and he's got an insane amount of debt. So basically what you do is you sell all the items off, and you try to you know, get that debt down to zero, and then when you do, you get something awesome. Well, the thing is during a normal playthrough your first time, you're never ever, unless you find some glitch and exploit it, you're never gonna eliminate that debt. You actually have to steal this item called an awakening from one of the bosses and the final boss, and you sell those. And you know, there is a New Game Plus, so basically what you have to do then is keep fighting the end boss over and over, stealing the awakening item, sell it, because really that's the only item that, you know, will get you any kind of money. Well, not really get you money, but will take off a big chunk of that debt. But you're going to have to do it like 20 times, which is ridiculous. You know, it takes forever the first, I don't know, like 5-10 times, and then eventually you get strong enough where, you know, it's not that bad, but it's still annoying that you have to do that. And yeah, like, while I'm on the subject of the whole side quest thing, side quests are so annoying in this game. For starters, like I told you, there are load times with the game, and a lot of these side quests kind of bring up the whole load time issue, because it'll have you backtracking, like doing all these fetch quests back and forth between like 5 different screens. So you have to sit there, you know, go to a screen, wait, go to a screen, wait, and you know, you have to keep doing this. So that's really annoying. I remember there was one where you have to get this battery, and then you go to this computer and you have to like hit the button, and it'll like randomly swap through these different colors and it'll uncover a picture, and there's no way to control it. And like after like 5 times with the battery, you have to go 5 screens over, recharge it, come back and randomly do this computer thing. And you know, you can be going back to recharge that battery like 10 times, and it's ridiculous. So yeah, definitely not cool. And the side quests are called Global Samaritan Campaigns, I think. I don't know, it's completely lame. You do get good rewards for them, but they're not fun at all. And there are some that are attached to post-game content, or New Game Plus, I should say. You know, there's actually a few dungeons that open up, which, you know, those were okay, because I think I was over the fact of how sucky the battle system was at that point. Oh, and before I forget, big thing is, well, not the main thing. The main thing is the battle system, which, you know, how long did it take me to describe it? Like 5 minutes? But this is another big thing too. Okay, Xenosaga 1 was a 1-disc game, and it takes like 40 to 50 hours to complete if you don't really do any side quests. Okay, Xenosaga 2, 2 discs. How long do you think it takes? It took me 25 hours to complete the whole game with almost all the side quests that I could do in the you know, initial playthrough. 25 hours for a 2-disc game. That doesn't make any sense. You know, it's ridiculous. Yeah, I think I've basically... Oh wait, no. There's one more thing I must cover. Is the story. The story is actually the one saving grace for this game, because the story is just as strong as the first game. You know, this time it focuses on the URTBs, Albedo, Negredo, and Rubido, and their story is really, really excellent, well done, very interesting. So yeah, that's the one thing that keeps this from being a totally unplayable game. And I've actually played through the game twice, believe it or not, basically because I just wanted to replay the whole series, even though you got that big piece of shit sitting in the middle. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about that game. It's, you know, for the most part, it's terrible. I don't know why they would change everything in a game. You don't do that, you know, with the sequel. You don't change every little thing about it. You can tweak a few things here and there to, you know, improve upon it, but don't change what made the initial game so great. And the thing is, too, is they know they fucked up, because like Xenosaga 3 pretty much went back for the most part to what Xenosaga 1 was. They did kind of do a different break thing for the battle system, one that worked much better, made a lot more sense, and wasn't so tedious. And one more thing with the battle system is there is kind of a way around the whole break zone thing. But what you have to do is you have to cast elemental sword ethers on all your party members, and you know, you have to do that for every character, every battle. So, you know, it's not quite as tedious, but it's still very tedious. It's not fun. Yeah. So I think I've said what I wanted to say about this game. I think I pretty much covered everything. If there's a sequel you guys played that you were completely disappointed in, where they just, you know, they just messed it up somehow, go ahead, you know, post a comment, video response. Or if, you know, you wanted to talk about Xenosaga 2, that's cool too. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.